It's the bot builder back for another video, and today is going to be a very special video, as this is a video I've been wanting to do for a while, and I think it's about time I do it. Yes, I'm just going to be talking about some of my Robot Wars opinions that I think might be a little bit unpopular. We have a range of them, so we have things I like that other people might not, and things I don't like that other people do. It's going to be a very controversial episode video, this is, so all I'm just going to say is, this is my opinion. If you disagree with my opinion, good for you. I don't want to have a debate in the comment section, so just accept that this is my opinion. Please, I'm not in the mood for having a debate with any of my fans. And please don't unsubscribe if you disagree with one of my opinions. It's just an opinion, guys. But anyway, let's just jump right into the video. So, my first unpopular opinion is that Typhoon 2 versus Storm 2 was correct. And oh my god, you can tell the level of quality this video is going to be when this is the first thing I mention. Now, for those who haven't seen the fight, Typhoon 2 versus Storm 2 was the Series 7 Grand Final. It was a really good fight, I have to say. I really enjoyed this battle. One of the best Grand Final fights in Robot Wars history, I'd say. And it was very close, with Storm 2 being the aggressive, whereas Typhoon 2 being the damaging. And in the end, the judges did say that Typhoon 2 came out on top. And while lots of people disagree with this outcome, as they felt Storm 2 dominated, which they didn't. I'll get into that. I personally think this was correct. Now, before I do get into it, I do have to say there have been times where there have been judges' decisions I disagree with. For example, Grim Reaper versus Big Nipper, or Mute versus Judge Shred 3, Chaos 2 versus Stinger, or the whole Daskapek fluffy draw debacle. I think all those decisions were wrong. And to be honest, if we're using the modern criteria, which if you can read here, not sure if you can read it, but the modern criteria is that aggression, it's basically where aggression carries more weight. Typhoon would win on a 16-14 decision. So why do I think the Series 7 Grand Final is correct? Well, as I said, if this had the modern criteria, Storm 2 would win. But the classic series criteria looks like this. So, basically, damage carries a weight of 4, aggression carries a weight of 3, control carries a weight of 2, and style carries a weight of 1, and you can score like 1 to 5 points for all of them, times by that number. So now we got that out of the way, now I can just say who I think won each category. First of all being damage, and to be honest, Typhoon wins damage for me. They did damage the front of Storm 2. As you see here, they're giving the parts of Storm 2. Now, there's a bit of controversy about damage, as Typhoon did lose a drive chain during the battle, but that was really up for contention because the chain was initially dislodged in Typhoon's battle with Exterminator. So, the damage really depends on how highly you would carry that. Like, would you carry it highly? Because, like, that was still wounds from the Exterminator fight. I felt like I'd be nice and give Storm 2 1 damage point and Typhoon 4, which in the end would mean that Typhoon gets 16 compared to Storm 2's 4 for damage. The next part is aggression. And yeah, honestly, I think it does go without question that Storm 2 wins the aggression category. Here they are lifting Typhoon 2, here they are punting them away. However, Storm 2 did suffer damage, and that would decrease their score quite a fair bit in aggression and rise Typhoon up a bit, because damage can also cause aggression. It's quite complex, to be honest, and it's honestly kind of difficult how you would judge damage and combine it with aggression, but I feel like I should split it, with Typhoon 2 having 2 aggression points, mostly due to the damage, whereas Storm 2 get 3 aggression points due to, getting in lots of several good rams. And in turn, that would make Typhoon 2 on 6 aggression points, whereas Storm 2's on 9 aggression points. The next one is control. This just goes without saying. Storm 2 dominated control. They controlled them for the majority of the fight, and Typhoon 2 wasn't really the best driven machine. They are directly driving into the wall, breaking it. So yeah, pretty obvious one here. Storm 2 wins control on 10 by getting all 5 control points, whereas Storm 2 on Typhoon 2 are on 0. But finally we have style, and I do not like style. And here's why, because style really hates Rambots. Like, there is literally no way a Rambot can gain style points, it seems. Because, well, in the eyes of stylishness, Rambot would be considered too boring. I don't think Storm 2's boring, by the way. Storm 2 are one of my favourite robots of all time, but style really doesn't favour Rambots, whereas it heavily favours spinners, and I think a spinner destroying the arena would be classed as pretty stylish and highly impressive. Yes, breaking the rules is stylish and impressive, I guess, now. But even then, like, Typhoon, by having a weapon, by virtue, wins style. I know that sounds stupid, but that's the reason they got rid of style, because it was stupid. And because of that, Typhoon wins style with 5, and Storm 2 win by 0. So, overall, this is how I think the final score looks. Typhoon 2 with 27 points, and Storm 2 with 23 points. And yeah, Typhoon 2 wins. I still think Typhoon 2 wins this fight. I like to think this fight as sort of similar to Duck versus Bombshell, in that I agree with the decision, but I felt the judging criteria wasn't good. And I like to think this fight is the main reason why the judging criteria changed for the reboot. Because, well, using the classic series criteria, yeah, they got this fight correct. But in the end, style shouldn't really be a category, and aggression should carry more weight than damage. And honestly, I am glad they did change the judging criteria, but using the classic series format, Typhoon 2 did deserve the win, and they do deserve the Series 7 championship. So there we go. Hopefully I put an end to that controversy. Some of you are going to still disagree with me in the comments. I don't care. I feel it was the correct decision. Now, the next unpopular opinion is I think Robot Wars Advanced Destruction is a great game. Now, I feel I should say Advanced Destruction is nowhere near as good as Extreme Destruction. Extreme Destruction is a really good game. In fact, it is objectively the best Robot Wars game of them all. It has really good physics, especially for a Game Boy Advance game. Really ahead of its time. Probably one of the best selection of robots as you could play as, well, you could play as the US machines as well as the competitors, and the customization's really good, but I still enjoy Advanced Destruction in a way. It's still a fun little game. I just like the simplicity of it. It's a really simple game, and it's just a fun game where you can just sit down, relax, and just play. Unlike Extreme Destruction for the GBA, which is a fun game, but it is relatively slow. I also think the selection of robots is pretty solid. It isn't the best. Like there is no Firestorm, which is a shame. And there are some robots who I probably could do without, like Onslaught, and Plunderbird 4, for example. I probably would have replaced them with, I don't know, someone like Firestorm and probably Spawn of Scudder or something. I don't know. And you can even play as the house robots, which is just brilliant. Tell me another. Well, actually, no. I think you can play as the house robots in the PS2 games, but you could play as Sir Killalot and make him go up against, I don't know, someone like 101 in this game, and that's just brilliant. And also, there are, unlike Extreme Destruction for the GBA, there are lots of different arenas, and they're all varied, but unlike so many other games where the arenas are just stupid, These arenas are pretty good. I actually enjoy these arenas. So we have the main studio arena. But it's pretty obvious there. You have a pit, some spikes, some saw blades. Then we have the robot factory, I believe it's called, which is a very good. It's a pretty good arena. There's a nice pit. There's a pit to push your opponents in, as well as some flamethrowers. The the firehouse, I believe it's called. I'm getting the names wrong, but that's a decent arena as well, and it is kind of fun to push robots into lava. And this arena, which I don't remember the name of, but it's it's like it's like the final destination arena with just a simple electric field in the middle, and it's pretty fun. And the robot mayhem mode. This is an excerpt right from the wiki. It pits a single robot against every robot that appears in the game. And I'll tell you, I've had a lot of fun trying to beat this mode. It is really difficult. It is really difficult, but it is a lot of fun. And it goes without saying, the graphics are pretty decent. The gameplay is pretty fast. And the robots look like the robots. You can tell which robot is which is a lot more than what Metal Mayhem for the Game Boy Color can say. Although, if there was one flaw, flippers are kind of OP. If you position it right, you could just get a robot in an infinite flip loop. Which, yeah, I never said the game was perfect. I just said the game was just a good bit of fun. But if you can find the game for cheap, I recommend if you find the game for cheap and you have a Game Boy Advance, I recommend picking it up, as it's not the most in-depth game, but it's just a fun, nice little game. And although I have heard some people call it a not very good game, I enjoy it. I think it's a decent one, and I recommend it. Now, back to TV shows. I think Das Kapek is kind of overrated. Oh yeah, if there are any Dutch Robot Wars fans or German Robot Wars fans or anyone who likes the UK versus Germany special, I'm sorry, but I'm not the biggest fan of Das Kapek. Now, don't get me wrong, Das Kapek are a good machine. They're a really good machine, but they're just overrated. And to prove you why, I'm just going to run down all of their fights. So, they're in the UK versus Germany special, they beat Ansgar's Revenge and Del Dog. Ansgar's Revenge are a slow-moving walker who had lots of issues and didn't have that much good pushing power. In fact, I believe they got outpushed by Gollum in the German series, so that's not really that impressive that they were able to beat them. And Del Dog is just a circle. He did have a spinner, but the spinner just didn't work. It's not really an impressive victory, and I do see some people try and say that their fight with Fluffy was impressive, and while I do think Daskapek should have won that fight, it still wasn't really an impressive victory. For one, they really struggled to deal with Fluffy, and it struggled to push them. A bar spinner. They struggled to push a bar spinner when the bar stopped working. And the only reason they were able to last that long against Fluffy was because, well, Fluffy, crapped the bed again, as it always does. Like, if Fluffy did work, Daskapek would just get smashed up. And I have evidence of this, as Daskapek is the same robot as Alien Destructor. And Alien Destructor lost to Twisted Metal. Now, unless if you're saying that Twisted Metal is a more destructive spinner than Fluffy, which it's not, then Daskapek got really lucky against Fluffy, and if Fluffy Spinner was working, they most likely would have lost. And also, they're useless against wedges. Let's just say that right now. When they fought Gravity in Dutch Series 1, yes, this is indeed what Gravity used to look like. The original Gravity wasn't really a fantastic wedge. Yet they were still able to outpush Daskapek. A 6-wheel drive robot got outpushed by a 2-wheel drive robot with an incredibly narrow wedge. Look, I'm not saying Daskapek is bad. It's good, but it's not that good. I'm afraid I like the robot, but it's just a bit overrated at the end of the day. Now, speaking of Dutch Robot Wars, I think that Dutch Robot Wars Series 2 is one of the best series. Now, I've seen some people call Dutch Series 2 a good series, but one of the best I haven't seen. Whereas I think Dutch Robot Wars Series 2 is brilliant. And to show you why, I'm just going to say my opinions on each heat. So, Heat A, I really like this episode. Like, sure, the opening episode between Lizard and Project 2 Hexam wasn't that great, but the first round was pretty solid overall. We had a really hilarious battle between Meshuggah and Lethal Swan. We got to see Namazu. Namazu didn't do too well, but I love the design of Namazu, so I don't care. And then the Heat Same Finals, Lizard beat Meshuggah in a pretty good close judge decision, from what I remember. It was a pretty decent fight, and a surprise victory by Lizard, and Nita Machine... Nita, it wasn't called Nita Machine back then. Nita versus Lizard, which was a really good close Heat final. And probably one of the best fights in Dutch Series 2. Heat B was another really solid heat. The first round wasn't that great. Yeah, what are you armoured with, Beaverbot? Just what are you armoured with? But it really picked up in round 2 with... First of all, we had Twister versus Impact, which was a really good battle. Impact gave it all that they had, and they did survive quite a while, but in the end they did get destroyed, and it is an incredibly brutal battle. And then Philippa versus Trasmaniac, which is another incredibly close battle. And it was really back and forth, with Trasmaniac getting in several good pushes, but Philippa flipping them around. And the Heat final was a surprise as well. Well, who honestly expected this weird fish-looking robot to take down Twister, who probably was one of the most destructive Dutch spinners? But they just got in underneath and flipped them over, and it was impressive. Heat C, probably the weakest of the heats in my opinion, but it was still very entertaining, as we saw Dutch Series 1 Grand Finalist Bam Bam be eliminated in the first round by newcomers Flepsa, which had a surprise factor to it. Twisted Metal Evo were a very impressive machine, ripping off the wheels of Slam Tilt. We got probably one of the best pittings by Hammerhead, literally swinging IDO down the pit. And Crustacean was very impressive in the heat. They actually won a heat. They were called Crabbot back then. Fun fact, the reason Crustacean were invited into Dutch Robot Wars Series 2 was because the captain... could speak Afrikaans, I believe that's how you say it, which is very similar to Dutch. I think it's a Dutch dialect that is spoken in South Africa. So yeah, that's why Crustacean were there. And they were impressive. I am not calling them by their Dutch name because it's lame as hell. Crustacean's a way better name. Heat D was also a very good heat. The first fight wasn't really that great, but it was still funny to see Amok get KO'd by the floor spinner. But we had two excellent flips by Scraptosaur. First of all, giving Tough as Nails the handstand, and then flipping Cyclone on its side. Two excellent heats. And we had Gravity versus Daskapek, and despite my dissing of Daskapek earlier, it was still a really solid battle. And it was a very impressive display by Gravity. Heat E was another great heat. It had Sakillot literally rip a robot in half in the first fight. Yeah, poor Vortex Inducer. And we had probably one of my favourite clusterbots show up in Worteldrier, also known as Square Root of 3. But Square Root of 3 is like so long-winded, I'll just call it Worteldrier. Who took down ODT Zero, who were a relatively decent wedge. For taking out a decent Rambot in Pika 3 before putting up a really good fight against Pulverizer. They were a really good pair. They're not a pair. They're a really good trio of clusterbots. And honestly, I'm going to say another controversial opinion. I prefer them to Gemini. Yeah, I prefer Wartle Drillia to Gemini. I just love this little clusterbot. They're just great fun. And the grand finals, my god, this was bloody amazing. Like, we had some incredible fights. In fact, all the fights in it were really solid. I can only show like 4. Crustacean versus Philippa 2. Such a close fight. It was incredibly close. And then we had Meshuggah versus Scraptosaur, which is one of my favourite fights of all time. In fact, it's I prefer it to Bigger Brother versus Hypnodisc. Controversial opinion that, but it was such a great comeback, and the ending is hilarious. Scraptosaur got mullered by Meshuggah, but then they activated the pit while Meshuggah were driving on it, and they drove down. Honestly, it fills me with so much hype anytime I watch it. And it should have been number one on the international countdown, NJG Woo. Then we had an incredible battle of the spinners between Pulverizer and Twister. This was a great battle. And the grand final itself was a really good, close, solid fight between Pulverizer and Philippa. And honestly, it is a bit of a controversial fight, but I agree with the outcome of it. That's all I'm going to say. And just for comparison, 6 out of the 6 episodes, in my opinion, were good. Yeah, there is not a single dud episode in this series. Now, it's nowhere near perfect. It's not even my favourite series. As it does have some flaws, like, honestly, Bam Bam and Meshuggah getting a wildcard, despite them not making a heat final, makes literally zero sense. And there were some pretty cack fights, like Bloody Murder Weapon versus Infinity. That fight was awful. But overall, it's just an incredibly good series. What isn't an incredibly good series... Again, I'm not saying that. I do like this series, but I do think Series 5 is a bit overrated. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I know so many people hold this series in such high regards, calling it one of the best series, but to me, it's not... It's a good series, but it is not the best, people. Come on. You really think Series 5 is better than, I don't know, Series 4? Or Series 7 or Series 10? No, it's really not. And to prove it, just like how I did for Dutch Series 2, I'm going to give my rundown of each episode. Heat A was a bit bland, to be honest. I mean, Chaos 2 versus Steel Avenger was a pretty good fight, but everything else was just downhill. 8645T versus T-Bone was a drag. Tartan Terror, just no. Obsidian and Stormforce were pretty bland newcomers. A confusing as hell heat final that literally made zero sense as to why they had the rematch. Like, Sminty were immobilized first. Like, what was the point in a rematch? I don't really like Heat 8 that much, to be honest. It's one of the weakest opening episodes, and while, yes, I do see, the point is to give Chaos 2, like, a heat they could just trounce easily, but if you want to watch a heat where Chaos 2 dominates everybody, just go watch Series 3 Heat E. Or Series 4 Heat A was a decent enough heat. Series 5 Heat A is just meh. It's just really meh. I mean, Chaos 2 versus Steel Avenger, it was an okay fight, but everything else was just... not really a fan. I wasn't really too much of a big fan of Heat B either. Like, Hypnodisc versus Atomic was a pretty good battle, but Juggernaut 2 were just... Oh, good lord. Wowot getting unfairly KO'd by Sakilot kind of makes me annoyed. And the heat final between Hypnodisc and Bulldog Breed. Considering both machines are good robots, to see the fight end in what was essentially a one-hit KO was really lackluster. It's another just meh heat, and if you want to watch a Hypnodisc destruction domination heat, just go watch Series 3 Heat H or Series 6 Heat K. As it's honestly better than this, and it's got way more destruction than this, so yeah. I will say this though, Heat C was bloody amazing. Heat C is one of my favourite episodes of all time, and honestly, it's kind of a crime that no one mentions this heat that much. Like S3 basically murdering Plunderbird 5 in one of the most destructive battles of all time. No one seems to mention this fight when it comes to Destruction Fest. Like, we always talk about Hypnodisc, but S3 is the Hypnodisc of vertical spinners. It was it basically set the groundwork of how to make an awesome vertical spinner, and it just destroyed everything. And we also had a really funny moment where General Carnage 2, who barely lifted Thunderbolt, still were able to get an out the arena flip. Shredder driving down the pit was hilarious. Stinger beating Hippopotamus. While it wasn't a great fight, it does have one of my favourite moments in the post-fight interview. I know I'm a bit evil for saying that, but the post-fight interview was hilarious. Mousetrap versus S3. Oh my god, I love this fight so much. It is honestly my second favourite Series 5 fight. Next to one we're going to get to later. And jeez, it's such an awesome fight. Just having two of these machines just locked together, it was really intense. And S3 beating Stinger in the Heat final was a good bit of fun. Seeing Stinger get knocked out and seeing just this newcomer, well, they're not really new, but seeing a newcomer just come onto the scene to just beat and just defeat some really big names. Great episode. Unlike Heat D, which goes back to the blandness. I like Firestorm, but honestly, this is kind of not the best showing by Firestorm. And it's kind of Firestorm at its worst when it comes to entertainment-wise. Firestorm can be entertaining. Series 6 Heat B was a really entertaining episode, and I quite like Series 7 Heat P, but this was not that entertaining. Decapitator versus Firestorm was a solid fight, but Sacromalot versus Rohog. I hate Rohog so much. They're one of my least favourite robots of all time. Gemini killing itself is just not fun. And okay, I'll give it this. The Heat final had one of my favourite Utas, but his Heat is just another really meh episode. And as I said, if you want to watch a Firestorm dominance Heat, just go watch Series 6 Heat B. It's way better than this. It seriously is. Heat Edo is a really good Heat, though. I mean, Wild Thing versus Trouble and Strife, Prize Fighter versus Thermidor, and Prize Fighter versus Wild Thing are all top tier fights. Some of the best fights in Series 5, I'd say. I mean, yeah, Napalm 2 versus Warthog is an absolutely god-awful episode, but aside from that fight, it was a decent episode, and I really recommend it. It's one of the Series 5s at its best. Unlike Heat F, which is so forgettable, this Heat is really bland, and it's honestly one of the weakest Series 5 episodes in my opinion. I mean, King B versus Chronic was an okay fight, I guess. 13 Black and Corkscrew made their debut. Unfortunately, their debut was in a pretty boring battle. It was nice to see a Team Death Robot again, though. Exterminator flipping itself over against Immortalis is a highlight, but the Heat final, we get one of the worst Heat finals I've ever seen in my life. I know I sound really harsh, but this Heat is so disappointing because it has so many good robots in it. Like, I really like Chronic 2, King B, 13 Black, Corkscrew, Dominator, Exterminator, Immortalis, and Derek. Even Immortalis was a solid machine. All the robots in this Heat were relatively good. It's just a shame that, well, it was bland. And I'm not trying to discredit any of these robots, because these machines know how to put on a good fight. We've seen them put on a good fight, but just guess they didn't put on a good fight this time. Heat G was alright, I suppose. It was an alright episode. Tornado versus Gravedigger was a solid fight. I keep saying solid a lot, but it was an okay battle. Spawn again versus Hydra, I quite enjoyed that fight. Seeing Hydra self-right quite quickly. I like seeing robots quickly self-right. Deitor versus Tornado, not really a great battle, but certainly a great moment. And probably one of my favourite Utas was Spawn again eliminating Evolution. Just the way the turret spins just makes Evolution look so helpless. It's funny. Although it did have some dud moments, like the Heat final was basically a one-hit KO. Dome No. And Sabretooth versus Evolution is just sad. Heat H though, look, I might be being a bit of a Scrooge to Series 5, but Heat H, oh my god, this is the best Heat in Series 5. Like, Granny's Revenge, Top Keck. It was almost as top keck as Zeus's airbag flipper in Series 3. But aside from the top keck meme-worthy stuff, we get some pretty solid stuff in here, like Wolverine putting up a good fight against Weedy Big Cheese, Robo Chicken versus Crustaceans, a good close battle, Axel versus Granny's Revenge, absolutely hilarious, Behemoth versus Supernova, honestly one of the greatest fights in Series 5, and one of my favourite battles. It's just such a good battle. And a great debut for Supernova. Not the team, the robot. The team already competed before with Oblivion. And one of the best moments, it's not a brilliant fight. As a fight, it's not very good. But as a moment, Weenie Big Cheese throwing Axel into space was amazing. And Crustacean getting probably one of the best pittings on Behemoth. Great stuff. And the Heat Final was pretty decent as well. Unfortunately, Heat I, you can kind of see a pattern with Series 5, can't you? Splinter versus Viper was pretty bad. So was Three Stakes to Heaven versus 11. Tetanus were a cool machine, but their fight with Onslaught was a bit boring. Honestly, Bigger Brother really saves this heat. If Bigger Brother wasn't in this heat would just be really bland. So I'm so glad we got Bigger Brother in this heat instead of, I don't know, swapping them around with, I don't know, Trouble and Strife or something. As Bigger Brother really carries this heat. And Heat K, which is just, no, not Heat K, Heat J, which is not very good. The only good fight is Panic Attack versus Barbarous. I like that battle. It's not overly amazing though, it's just a solidish fight. But Monad and Kryptonite, probably two of the worst robots in Robot Wars history. Honestly, if Dr. Fist could beat Kryptonite, I wouldn't even be surprised. And although Major Tom driving into the pit was funny, it still does kind of make there not be a Major Tom Panic Attack Heat Final, and I kind of wish we got a Major Tom Panic Attack Heat Final, because seeing this thing in the Heat Final would have been hilarious, and it probably would have been a much better fight than Cat 3 versus Panic Attack, which is just Panic Attack basically trying to get Cat 3 off his back for like a solid minute before it eventually drives in. At least with Major Tom, it would have been funny to see it get wrecked by the house robots after Panic Attack flips it over. Not really a fan of this heat, as you can tell. And I'm not really a huge fan of Heat K either. Razor versus Widow's Revenge, I'll give it that. Absolutely hilarious fight. Too bad everything else was boring. Yeah, Something versus Widow's Revenge. Boring fight. Destructor Bubble versus Accident. Accident died. Rick versus Suicidal Tendencies. It was okay, I guess, but it was nowhere near as good as other Crusher Destruction fights. Same could be said for Razor and Big Nipper. The Heat Final was a bit bland, and Rick versus Destructor Bubble was a mistake, let's just say. And Heat L, which, I mean, at least Series 5 goes out of a good heat. Twister versus Claude Hopper was pretty good. In that, it was hilarious seeing Twister die. The fight itself was terrible, and we do not speak of Twister. We do not speak of Twister. Like, seriously, Berserk from Series 3 would have done better than Twister would, and I'm not even saying it as a joke, because Berserk from Series 3 was actually good. Fluffy's debut was really awesome. Seeing it destroy 101 and Terahertz was pretty good. However, the Heat Final does make me a little bit upset. As Fluffy came so close to beating Pussycat. If they beat Pussycat, it would be a classic fight, but they didn't, and we just got a "oh come on" fight. And I do not like the "oh come on" fights. They're my least favourite types. It's the reason I don't like Storm 2 versus Rhino versus Supernova versus Mayhem. It just makes me sad. Semi-final way, though. Oh my god, this episode is awesome! Chaos 2 versus Wild Thing. Do I even need to say why this fight is one of the best of all time? No, I don't, because it's been said so many times. Absolute classic. It's not my personal favourite of Series 5, but it's just a great fight. The losers melee between S3, Wild Thing, and Spawn Again is a really underrated fight. Lots of good destruction and a good comeback by Wild Thing. And a very close judge's decision too. Bigger Brother versus Chaos 2, another underrated tussle. And a pretty good flipper fight as well. And Razor versus S3, which I feel people don't really talk about this fight that much. Out of all the Razor domination fights, this is probably one of the better ones. It just shows how great of a driver Ian Lewis was to just avoid that massive spinner of S3. Because, like, S3 in theory could beat Razor, but Ian Lewis just outdrove it, and that was just great stuff. Semi-final B, on the other hand, was a bit crap. In fact, it was really crap. Like, Weedy Big Cheese dying after getting that massive flip on Dominator 2 is a massive oh come on moment that just makes me sad. Firestorm being killed in one hit by Hypnodisc. No. Panic Attack suffering from drive issues. A really boring losers melee. And Hypnodisc versus Dominator 2. I really like Dominator 2 as a robot. Dominator 2 are my favourite Axe robot. But their Series 5 performance kind of upsets me. They just got some really mediocre fights. And although I will give it this, Firestorm vs Pussycat was a decent fight. And it's nice to see Pussycat go out with a good fight. It's nice to know that David Gribble's last fight was a good battle, but aside from Firestorm vs Pussycat, this heat was just... this episode was just... it was not very good, and I don't like it. Fortunately, the grand final was brilliant as all hell. Bigger Brother versus Hypnodisc. Considered one of the best fights of all time. It's in my top 25, not top 10, but it's still a solid comeback. Firestorm versus Razor, on the other hand, is my third favourite fight of all time, if I remember correctly. Like, yeah, it is my third favourite fight of all time, next to Razor versus Behemoth in Series 3 and Behemoth versus Apollo in Series 10. Which is my favourite fight of all time. And it's just... I went into it thinking it would just be a generic Razor Firestorm battle. But no. Firestorm gave it their all. They wedged underneath Razor, they pushed it around, but Razor was still able to fight back strongly, causing the damage. And the fight itself was incredibly close. And honestly, I'd argue that if it had reboot criteria, Firestorm would probably win. The third place playoff was a really fast-paced tussle between Firestorm and Hypnodisc, and Razor versus Bigger Brother. While some people just aren't really a huge fan of Razor battles, I like this one. I like most Razor fights, but I like this one just because, well, Razor finally won something, and they absolutely deserved it. So yeah, that's my overall overview of Series 5. It kind of is like a box of celebrations. Like, it's good, but the bounties just ruin it. It's good, but the Heat Fs and the Heat As and Bs and Ds and Ks and Js and semi-final Bs just ruins it for me. I can't really call it the best series because it has so much fluff and dud episodes and just really meh episodes that just make me go... Oh, alright, that was okay, I suppose, I guess. It wasn't fantastic. Honestly, I don't understand why some people... Well, okay, I could see why some people call it their best series. Like, when Series 5 is good, it's really good. But when it's not... there's just so much... just mediocre stuff in there. It's a good series, but it's... kind of overrated, and it's not really a series I hold that highly. It's honestly one of the weaker Robot Wars series, in my opinion, to be honest. It doesn't really hold a candle to like the likes of Series 4 or 6 or 7 or 10 or Dutch Series 2. It's just kind of weak. It's still good, but it just is overrated. I'm sorry. So let's move away from probably my most controversial decision, my most controversial opinion, to one I don't think people are going to care about too much. In that, I say that Carbide versus Ironside 3 is my favourite Series 9 fight. I don't know why people don't talk about this fight. I think this is a really good battle. And keeping in mind, there are lots of good Series 9 fights, like Aftershock versus Terahertz, Behemoth versus Eruption versus Cobra versus Hobgoblin, Supernova versus Frostbite, and Eruption versus Aftershock. They're all really good fights, but Ironside 3 versus Carbide is my favourite of them all. I just love this battle so much, and it's cool, it's short, but it is sweet, and it's easily one of the best horizontal versus horizontal clashes of them all. In fact, I'd argue it is the best one of them all. Like, both machines had to play it really tactically in this fight. And honestly, I'm surprised Carbide even won it, because Ironside 3 could have won this fight. But it just shows how much of an amazing driver Dave Moulds is. Like, Ironside 3, for a brief period of time, they were winning it, in my opinion. He's getting many good sparks, and even recovering from a flip from the floor flipper, but they left their guard down for 1 second, and Dave Moulds just hit the back, and their blade stopped working. They wore them down, and they just finished them off. It's just some fantastic driving, lots of great hits, tons of great sparks, and it's honestly an incredibly underrated fight that I'm surprised not too many people talk about. So yeah, that kind of does it for my video on my unpopular Robot Wars opinions. If you want, you can leave your own unpopular opinions below. Comment down below about how wrong I am and how much of an idiot I am for thinking Series 5 is overrated or thinking Das Capec's overrated. Please, these are just opinions. Please take it with a grain of salt, guys. But yeah, until then, though, the Bot Builder, out.